Hey everyone, it is Ellen Teresa from Advocate of Soul podcast. And as many of you know, I love storytelling and I love the human journey. And one of the reasons that I put this podcast on is because I believe that right now in this time in the earth where we are having so many shifts and so many changes, it's so important that we gather together as a community and to hear how everybody is doing, how they're all navigating it, how they're evolving in maybe their belief systems, how they're working through the challenges and finding triumph on the other side. So I'm just thankful that you're here. I'm thankful for those who have been supporting me. I thank you. Just these are raw, they're unedited. I don't filter them. I don't do anything with them. I put them right up right after. And so this is just a real pleasure and a joy to have with us today Gil Hodges, who I ended up meeting through someone else that I knew who's going to be interviewed tomorrow, actually, from the Philippines, and named Ruth. And so, Gil, it is just a real pleasure and an honor to have you here with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me on. I've actually been looking forward to this. I know we had a couple of hiccups along the way getting this recorded, but I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. And so, Gil, I know that you've had a real spiritual transformation, and there has been a lot within your journey, spoken and unspoken things that have happened within your journey to get where you are today. And I'm just wondering, would you be willing to just share some of your story with all of us of how you came from point A to where you are right now for everybody?
Yeah. Well, and I don't know how much detail I have time to get into, but I will start with the fact that, I grew up, um, wasn't really raised in the church or anything, kind of the Easter and Christmas time churchgoer. But by the time I got into, um, by the time I left home, I started, getting interested in spirituality or Christianity at the time. And so I wound up, I guess, here's something I'll back up a little bit. So when I was 12 years old, I went and saw the movie, The Late Great Planet Earth. A
Oh,
lot of
yes.
people in our age
Yeah.
group remember that movie. And that instilled in me this interest in the book of Revelation. So I, had looked into it a little bit here or there, but never really dove in too deep. Well, anyway, through a lot of different circumstances, I wound up in Sacramento, California, and had a cousin there that he let me come and stay there, and he got a seminar flyer in the mail from a church, and it was from the Seventh Day Adventist Church, and they
Okay.
were advertising Daniel and Revelation, and he wasn't interested, but I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go check this out. Well,
Mhm.
that was it. That began, for me, a committed spiritual journey that really transformed my life at the time, and it's just been from that point, just one thing after another that has just continually led me deeper and deeper into, this spiritual journey. I'm going to call it that because where I'm at now, wow, it's so different than what I was where I was at then. Because I actually went through a 10-year process to become a pastor there. It's 10 years to get ordained. I got ordained, and literally within 6 months, I resigned
Oh wow. Oh
because
my gosh.
it
What
just
what denomination?
the Seventh Day Adventist
It
Church.
was the seventh
Yeah.
day. Okay. All right.
Yeah, interesting too for me because I was very logical, very analytical, and a lot of the church stuff that I'd experienced just didn't make sense to me. But when the Seventh Day Adventist Church presented what they had, for me, it was analytical, it was logical, it made sense at the
Mhm.
time, and and so it really helped draw me in and begin the spiritual journey. So it's like, the universe has its ways of getting us where it wants us. So that was the beginning of the journey, and it was very fundamental teachings, and very I look back at it now, it's very legalistic and so forth. But that was the beginning. That's, I guess, kind of what I needed to get started. But once I got into it, and I had what I had called crisis of faith 3 different times, where I
Mhm.
just, even just looking at the teachings of Jesus and what I was teaching, from the denominational doctrines, I'm like, this isn't making sense. And So one of them happened while I was in college. Another one happened in seminary, and then this last one happened right toward the end of my second church that I was pastoring. And but with it came a face plant, spiritually, and I just burned out. And so I had this crisis of faith, had the burnout, did a face plant, and um, I was looking for a place to kind of get some help. I was seriously depressed at the time, just couldn't function. And so I started going to this place that actually was a sister group, I guess you might call it, of Elijah House. So they'd all
Oh
been through
my
the training of
gosh.
Elijah House.
Yes.
And here, yeah. So anyway, I'll just tell you, it's kind of a funny story for me, but in the Adventist church, they don't believe, they believe that speaking in tongues is of the devil. And
Mhm.
so I'm at this group meeting with the Elijah House people, and they're around me,
Oh,
and they all start praying in tongues. And I'm
I
sitting
can
there,
imagine.
I'm freaking out. I'm sitting there going, "Help me, Jesus! Help me, Jesus! Help me!"
Gosh.
And but anyway, I started having this vision, and it just
Mhm.
blew me away because I started having this vision. And as I'm going, as I'm, seeing things in this vision, there'd be one person who would stop praying in tongues, and then they would share what they were seeing, and what they were seeing was exactly what I had just seen in the vision. And I'm like, well, that was weird. And then it
Mhm.
happened again. I'm like, okay, this is really strange. And it happened
Mhm.
again 3 times. And for me at that point, I'm just like, my whole world was shattered because I'm like, here, speaking of in tongues is supposed to be of the devil. I'm having this vision of Jesus doing some miraculous things in my life. And these people are seeing the same thing and they're confirming it. You'd think if it were the devil, right, that they would be denying
Yeah.
it or tearing it apart. But no, they were confirming it. And so at that point, my wife and I at the time she was kind of experiencing some same similar things, and we're like, wow, is this really all true then? And again, just the God things that happen.
Mhm.
We had been kind of sneaking off on Sundays. So, I preach and teach on Saturdays, Seventh Day Adventist Church,
Mhm.
preach and teach on Saturdays. And on Sundays, we were kind of sneaking into Sacramento and visiting these Sunday churches. And the one we kind of liked the most and started kind of, going to semi regularly was the
Oh
Vineyard
my
Church.
gosh.
And,
Yes.
and, and it turned out, our one hangup was the Seventh Day Sabbath. It's like, how do you explain away the Seventh Day Sabbath? Because we just doctrinally we couldn't. I couldn't. Well, turns out that the pastor of that Vineyard Church was a former Seventh Day Adventist pastor, and it just blew us away.
Okay, you can't
And not
plan
only
that.
that,
You can't plan that,
not at
Gil.
all.
That is those are those type of little testimonies, right? That you just know were
Yeah,
divining moments in your life. Yeah.
yes, and it gets better. 2 weeks before we started just visiting that little church, he had done a series on the Seventh Day Sabbath and how to view it in terms of,
Oh my
letting it go as this 24-hour period that you had to keep. And so he gave us the tapes. My wife and I listened to it, and we're both like, well, now what do we do? Here,
God.
this is my job. This is my income. Um, eh, 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 yeah. Anyway, it just there's a lot of funny stories. Our kids were 2, 4, and 6. We didn't know little ears in the back seat of the car were listening as we're going, to this church and back. And so it wasn't very long. It was like probably not even 2 months, I guess, that we were doing this. And my son, oldest, 6 years old, he obviously had been listening, and we were talking about leaving the church and moving to Sacramento, the Adventist church, leaving the Adventist church.
Mhm.
And so on Tuesday, this all happened in 1 week. 1 week. He goes to this Pathfinder group, which is like Boy Scouts for the Seventh Day Adventist Church.
Mhm.
And at right there, he mentions to the leader there, he goes, we're leaving the church and moving to Sacramento.
Oh
And
my God.
so that leader of that group, the Pathfinders, she sat on the school board. And on Thursday night, so that was on Tuesday night, here Thursday night, 2 days later, she sits on that board. And she repeats it. And on that board sat my head elder. And so come Saturday Sabbath, I get done preaching and I come down off the pulpit and I'm going back to the back of the church to meet everybody as they're going out, as I usually did. And my head elder comes up, in that aisle, and he meets me halfway and he says, "So I hear you're leaving the church and moving to Sacramento." And I'm like, "When did the spirit of prophecy fall on the Seventh-day Adventist Church?" Because I'm like, how did you know that?
That's great. Oh my God.
Uh, but it was a very short, like less than a month, and we were gone.
Wow.
So that was
Wow.
a massive shift for us. And from there, yeah, I went into business for about, let's see, 17 years. I went into business for
Wow.
17 years, still
Wow.
active in some ministry stuff, but we were growing and attending different churches, but each one a little bit more spiritual than the last. And then in 2000, and so all that happened in 2001 when we left that church.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then in 2015, my wife and I, we started another church. Series of things happened, and my heart kind of opened up to pastoring again. So
Yes, yes.
anyway, I'll
So
slow down for a minute.
no,
Let's
no,
just
no, no. You're good. You're good.
go
I
as a
love how
whole.
you got a whole flow and I love it. But I do want to backtrack a bit because I know
Okay.
that there are people in my audience that experience this crisis of faith and they
Hmm.
sometimes don't have language for it and they don't know how to talk about it and they don't know what this is. You said that you had three distinct crises of faith. Can you
Hmm.
share those if you want to, what they looked like? Why did you have them? What were they about?
Well, my heart's always been after God, after what
Mm.
is this divine entity. It's always been seeking that. And so in my studies as a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, I kept coming across in those days, I kept coming across this section of Jesus basically spiritualizing all the Ten Commandments. Every commandment had been spiritualized and taken to a whole new level,
Mm.
and again spiritualized, taken out of the context of just dogma, and made into something more beautiful, with the exception of this seventh day Sabbath. It's like, how do you turn a 24-hour period into something spiritual? I couldn't legitimately get past that. And every time I came to that same crisis of faith, I was about ready to leave the Adventist church. It's just like, this doesn't make sense, because they were very, they're very, it's a very fundamental church.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, those crises for me were crisis in terms of, I'm about ready to leave the church. I'm about ready to leave this church. And that was very hard because I spent 10 years going to college,
Yes.
going to seminary, doing their interns and externships and all that stuff to become a pastor. And and then, again, so crazy that 6 months after I get ordained, I had I left the church. Um,
So did
but
you
it was
see any
because I
other,
finally found an answer.
yeah, did you see any other discrepancies like in the Bible and different things? Like, I mean, some people have had where, they have this crisis of faith because they realize the Bible is not matching up with either what they're seeing within the church, because, people are living a
Yeah.
lifestyle that maybe is different than what they're seeing in the Bible. It could be
Yeah.
just they've had their own encounters. What was it, the Bible that helped that, or what would you say?
Well, again, coming from that fundamentalistic attitude, the Bible was still very strong for me. And yes, there were certain things. Well, actually, I saw a lot of little things. But as a pastor and someone, for me, integrity meant towing the line and
Mm.
sticking to the doctrines that of the church that I was representing.
Hmm.
And it, and it was a big, big deal to just throw away my entire
Mm.
career and my, what I put my heart and soul into for 10 years. That was very challenging for me to let all that go, but it meant more to me to follow that spiritual path than it did to, just toe the line.
Were
And
you ever
so
afraid?
there were a lot of things.
Were you ever
Huh?
afraid that, some people experience, like for me, I know when I began to like suddenly see things, I was afraid that I was going down the wrong path. So I was very afraid
Oh,
that God's wrath was going to be right there. And, next thing we know, a lightning bolt is coming. Did you experience those type of anxieties, I guess we could call them?
there's always that a little bit in the back of your head. I think anybody in their right mind, because we don't know, right? We
Right.
seriously don't know.
Yep.
None of us know what
Yep.
truly is the actual true path. Our experiences tell us things, and our own studies and our own journey tell us a lot and inform us a lot and give us evidence for a great deal of our life's journey. But in the end, at least for me myself, when I'm honest, I don't know. I really don't
Mm.
know.
Wow.
So for me, it all comes down to simply trust. I got to trust, and I do trust that the universe is for me, that God is for me. He's not against me, and that he's got it. He's got it because otherwise we're all screwed.
Well,
Seriously.
yes, yes, yes. And you wouldn't have
Yeah.
probably
You
started a
know,
church either, would you? You wouldn't have started this next church with your wife if you didn't have a certain trust level.
yes, right. And we were still somewhat fundamental in our beliefs when we started this church in 2015. So 17, 15, that was 15 years later. I was still in business, but in 2017, kind of felt God prompting me to burn all my bridges, burn all my business bridges, and go back into ministry full time and
Wow.
trust Him.
Wow.
And that
Yep.
was that was a leap because I actually, my last 3 or 4 years, so 2012 to 2015, and then into 2017 anyway. So what's that like? Yeah, it just
Eh,
quite a bit of time. In fact, I created a ministry called Christian Business Intersection, where I had literally almost anyway, all the Christian business ministry leaders. So, of all the, I can't even think C12 and,
mm,
I don't know, I can't remember all of them now, but there were 15 major different marketplace ministries that, were operating in Sacramento, and seldom did one know maybe more than one or two of the other leaders. I brought them all together, and we became a powerhouse in Sacramento. We had people coming over from um, San Francisco to talk and to share, and Francis Chan was lined up, and a lot of different things were really powerful. Really, a lot of things happening at the time in that realm and in that venue. So here, and one of my messages was having a business to, support the ministry that you want to do rather than relying on donations, which, that really sits well with a lot of people these days, obviously. But in 2017, I can't help it, but God, just this voice in my head kept saying, when are you going to trust me? When are you going to really trust me? And I knew what that meant. It meant burning my bridges to the businesses and relying on God for the sources and the resources and the income. And when we made that decision, we literally were $3,000 a month short of just paying our bare minimum bills, rents and expenses. $3,000 a month short. We made the decision to go for it. And this was my shift in understanding, money and energy and so forth, that over the next 12 months, there was provision every single month, and every single month it was different, with the exception of 2 months where it came in a similar way as some other month. But every single month, so 10 months, 10 different ways God provided that $3,000. And then after that, I'm just like, you know what? I've got all the money in the world because
mm,
God is the provider, and
mm.
whatever I need when I need it, it arrives. And that was a game changer for me, and has been, and is even right now, because things have shifted, and I'm just like, okay, I know that if I'm meant to do what I'm doing, the resources will arrive, and that's all there is to it. And if it's not, okay, well, I'll go into the next thing.
Right, right. And you trust
Yeah.
that that next thing will present itself too. That's the sense
Yep.
I get. Like if we now need to switch, you're going to do it. So you mentioned something about
Yeah.
money and energy, and I'd like to talk about this because I think sometimes it's a learning curve to understand money as energy, and that for me is still
Yeah.
something I'm growing in. And I think a lot of people are growing in, especially now with the way things are happening in our planet. So can you share a little bit more about money and energy?
Well, yeah, I hope you're okay with me saying this, but I'm writing a new book right now, and it's called
Hmm.
Breaking Your Matrix. And I'm telling you, I'm so far from the fundamental Christian lifestyle and belief system that it's oh, I'm going to say it is kind of funny. I was going to say it's not even funny, but it is kind of
It is
funny.
kind of funny.
It is because breaking
Mhm.
your matrix is all about understanding how deeply all of our programming goes. And, we are biological computers, so to speak. If, if we didn't have programming, we would just be a blob of flesh and bone and whatever. We would just, it's like a computer without a program in it. It's just a big paperweight. It's kind of worthless, bunch of metal.
Mm, mm.
Um, without programming. So we are programmed, and we are programmed 100%. Uh, and most of that programming, I mean, I'll just throw out a number and say probably 99% of all the programming, we as human beings are not even aware that we have received it, accepted it, agreed with it, and we live in it. And once we wake up to the fact that we are programmed, then we can begin to deprogram some of the things that are not beneficial to us. And one of the big things that I've recognized is, I just go back to Einstein, E equals MC squared. Everything is energy. Our
Wow.
thoughts, my body, money. And then I've shared, several times lately, and this is a whole new concept for a lot of people. And oh boy, I got some pushback on this, but it's just truth. But these things called egregores,
Oh,
it's
yes.
these things are like
Mhm,
entities on their own, and they
mhm.
can only really thrive when we give them their energy. And it doesn't;
Okay.
those things don't care if they get it through through negative or positive energy. They don't care.
Yeah.
They just thrive on energy, and we're the ones that feed it. Human beings, we feed it. So whether it's politics, you got your Democratic Party, and they're, all about one thing, and then you've got people that are just absolutely hating that the Democratic Party, and you've got people that love the Democratic Party, and it doesn't matter which side of that thing you're on, that entity, you are feeding it your energy. You are allowing it to thrive. The money system, capitalism, all of that is, again, just another egregore that we have all fed into, we've all bought into, we've all agreed with it, and we're feeding it our energy. My thing at this point in life is, how do I detach and untether
Mm.
from all of these egregores and energy systems and rise above it? And so this is where, for me, Neo in the Matrix, man, it just is so real. The very last scene in the very first movie where, he's in the phone booth and he's
Oh,
telling
yeah.
the AI, it's like, hey, I'm not telling you how it's going to end, but I am telling you how it's going to begin. I'm going to walk out of this phone booth and I'm going to show these people what's really capable, what they can do.
Mm,
And
mm.
he walks out and he just defies all of the laws of gravity, the quantum, understanding of, he just defies it all. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's other people, Jesus and Buddha and, others, we have stories of them doing the same thing. They rose above the entire system where we've been programmed to believe that gravity's real. We've been programmed to believe that this world is real. I believe we can rise above it, and from that place of being above it and beyond it, that we can then, just as Neo was able to go back into the matrix and able to override anything and everything in the matrix, I honestly and sincerely believe that we can do the same. The challenge is we've got so many agreements and so many things
Yeah.
that we have accepted that we've got to go through these and kind of piece by piece in our own heart, our own mind, our own body, because our body is full of DNA memory, our heart and our mind, all of that has to be deprogrammed so that we can let go of all that crap. And, and some of it's good. What I tell everybody is let everything go. So I go, I take people through meditations in the untethered retreats that I do. We go through meditations where we're just letting go. We're letting go. We're going
Mm,
deeper and deeper. We're just
mm.
letting go of all the programming, all of it, good or bad. Just let it go because it's just programming. And once we, have been able to reach that place of peace and rest where we are free, And it's a process. It doesn't, I don't,
Sure.
I'm not walking through walls yet, or water,
Let me know when
not
you
walking on
do.
water yet.
Okay.
I will. I'll, I'll put the word out. No, but once we get there, it's just beautiful to recognize, wow, now some of that programming that I was given, some of it I like. It's just like Neo going back in the Matrix, or the one guy that chose to, plug himself back into the Matrix.
Mhm.
He's eating a steak and he's like, this steak tastes pretty good. I like this. I'm going back in the Matrix. But we can step back in the Matrix like Neo in the sense where we're not subject to being a prisoner of it anymore, not a victim of it anymore, but we can step back into it realizing we can and we are above it if we wake up enough to realize who we really are. And so it's anyway. I'm excited writing the book. It's a process, obviously, but I keep putting little pieces of it out on Facebook every once in a while.
That's really so. So let me ask you a question. Would you say that within your church experiences that you were feeding egregores within the church?
Absolutely,
Where were you doing that?
absolutely. Oh my goodness. You take any cause. I mean, abortion, that's just another egregore. Whether you're for it, against it, doesn't matter. Um, you know, anything. Homosexuality, it's another one. It's an egregore. It's put out there and people are for it and they're against it. And we're all fighting. Why don't we rise above it and just be,
Hmm.
and just be and allow others to be? That's to me the beautiful space is when we can rise above it and we're able to just be. You be
Hmm.
you, I be me, and we be happy with one another and just excited that you get to be you and I get to be me. And we just love our journeys and understand that we're here to experience this life. And it's just so fascinating when we dig into it and realize, you know what? If you took away your five senses, you wouldn't even know you existed here.
Very
There's nothing
true.
for you to connect to this world. So then who are you? Who are you?
Yes.
What are you at that point? You would have to learn to just be. There's
Right,
no description for
exactly.
it.
So some of the miracles, this is always my thing when I talk to different people. And we talk about egregores or we're having this discussion on energy. Um, the miracles that I know I saw in the charismatic church for 30 years were pretty profound, pretty wild. We would have attributed them to Jesus. We would have attributed them to the moving of the Holy Spirit, the anointing of God, all of these things. And I know those are labels and titles and all of those things, those are words. But could those miracles, some of the things that we saw happen, have a different explanation than it being this was God, this was the Holy Spirit, this was Jesus? Could there be a different explanation to it?
100%. I mean, yeah, that to me is getting back into the area of we don't know, and anybody who claims that they do know, for me, they lose credibility right away because we don't know, and we just don't know. You can't prove it. So
Hmm.
number one, let's show a little humility in the area of understanding that we don't know, and
Hmm.
approach it from that place of, well, here's an idea, here's another idea, and here's the evidence. And then we, in this reality that we're living in, this perceived reality, we live it based on evidence. I'm sitting on a park bench, and the evidence is that it's solid enough, it's holding me up, it's not, dropping me to the ground, and I'm not falling through the earth, nothing like that. But when we start looking at miracles, all those really are something that's happened that's beyond our understanding, something that's happened that's beyond our ability to explain. Now, I've always used this as analogies, like so pick a miracle. Let's just pick a crazy one that I don't know that's ever happened, but say I'm in a classroom, and we're all sitting in the classroom listening to the teacher, and all of a sudden a desk rises up all by itself, moves across the room, and sets itself down in another place, and we're all going, "What just happened?" We would
Hmm.
call that a miracle. It's like, what the heck just happened? That was
Hmm.
incredible. And then
Hmm.
we all get to heaven and we go to God and we say, God, how did you do that? And he goes, I don't know. It's just a miracle. I don't believe God would do that. I'm sure he had
Yes.
a way that he, moved the energy and put that thing in a different place, or grew out an arm instantly, or gave somebody their sight back instantly. It's all,
Yes.
again, and it's energy. And so when you have enough people engaged and focused in a specific area, can we create energy to recreate the cornea of the eye, to recreate the arm? And can one person have that much energy to shift things like that? I would
Mm,
say absolutely, probably
hmm.
yes. But at the same time, it's like, can they do it every time, all the time? Apparently, we believe, well, let me take it back. I was going to say, we believe Jesus was able to do it every time, all the time. But he said,
Hmm.
no, Jesus said,
I
no, there were
yes.
people that because of their unbelief, he could not. They wouldn't receive it. That's the
Mm,
crazy thing.
mm,
We have to be willing to receive and believe and agree. Because if we're not willing to receive and believe and agree, it's highly unlikely some of this stuff would ever happen, especially outside of normal, physics and so forth.
hmm,
It's like
hmm.
you might go to a doctor and get a shot for something, or get something fixed, or get your elbow, or a broken arm set, and that's something where it's like, okay, we can see that, we believe that that happened, okay, but can it happen by itself when I'm just sitting there and everything heals back up? I again, rising above the matrix, breaking our matrix, our thought patterns, our belief systems, our agreements, breaking all those and stepping into the arena to understand that, wait a minute, I can believe differently, and can I begin to
Mm.
shift things with my belief and my understanding? Can I shift the energies of what's going on around me? This is where I'm at now. This is my spirituality now.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
absolutely believe. Okay, so I absolutely believe, I choose to believe. Let me put it this way. This was in my
Hmm.
second book choice. I choose to believe that there is a God who has my personal interest, loves me, cares for me, and knows everything. I believe that God is energy. E equals
Hmm.
MC squared. God
Hmm.
is light, and that Christ consciousness is that energy. It is love. It is love. And that love created this entire universe. So everything's created with love. We don't understand why there is evil and darkness a lot, but at the same time, when I go back to again my second book choice, it's like, well, you can't have love, you cannot have true love without
Hmm.
choice. There's
Hmm.
got to be freedom of choice. So if you give freedom of choice, well, that means you also just gave freedom for evil, because some people, in order to truly show that there is the choice in choosing to love, will choose the opposite. And that's just proof that it's freedom. There is freedom. So there is
Yes.
true love. When you see love, it's really there because they're choosing it, not because they've been programmed to love by God. And so they
Hmm.
can't resist. It's like, I've got to love you, God. That's all I can
Hmm.
do.
Hmm.
Is that really love? You know, that's the
Yes.
robotic, that's the programming. So anyway,
So
and
how
it's
did
a
you switch? How did you switch from seeing, or maybe you haven't switched, or maybe I'm going to reword this question, seeing God as energy? Because in the Christian tradition, you're taught that, it's God in three persons. He's a person, he is he, because of the way the Bible was written and all of that.
right.
How did you come to the understanding that God is just energy? Or is he still, and I'm using he in there, or is he still
Yeah.
kind of have a personal person side to it?
Well, and I do believe that there is a person side to it. Because apparently, at least through Jesus, he wanted to relate to us as a father. Um, and then, I
Mhm.
think some things got really messed up. I think Holy Spirit is supposed to represent mother. Honestly, there's so
Mhm.
much proof of that. And then Jesus comes as a son, which we all are sons. And he said we were to be like him, and that not only that, we would do greater things than he did. We are to be sons like him.
Hmm.
We're all sons of God. God being the creative force that is everything. And just like I've got cells in my body, I feel like I'm a cell in his body. Yet somehow I don't have a connection to my cells to where I can talk to them directly. Maybe I just need to focus on that more. Who knows? But it's like God has this ability to connect with us personally and have these conversations with us. And so for me, that revelation came I do a lot of meditating where I just sit and I
Okay.
listen. And I'll say that at least 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, I just really felt that source, God, universe, said to me, stop looking at videos and reading other books. Just listen to me. And so literally, I would spend, 1 to 3 hours every morning just in meditation, listening. And that's where I got, so much of the revelation for, the books and the courses that I've written and so forth. And then when I do that and I put it out there, there's always somebody that says, "Oh, so and so's teaching that, and so and so's,
Mm.
all about that." And all it is for me is that's affirmation and confirmation that you don't need to read a book, you don't need to go see a video. If you just sit and listen, you will get the information that God wants you to have, and then you get to be you by sharing that information with other people who care to listen. Um,
Mhm.
I think I think the world would be an amazing place if everybody were to just sit, listen, and get what they're meant to get and share that with everybody. Wouldn't it be amazing? Rather than, I feel like we're just, the tree of knowledge versus tree of life, right? Tree of
Mm,
life is
mm,
listen to God, get it from the source, and share it. Tree of knowledge is for me a little bit more like, just the fanatical reading and consumption of videos and all this, where all they're doing is getting other people's information. Why
mhm,
not take a moment and listen and get the information you're supposed to have? It's again the programming of the world is got us so messed up that number one, most of humanity, they love drama. So all the
mhm,
news is
mhm.
negative, not all of it, but a good portion of the news is all negative, creates this divisive setup, the egregores and all that, so that we are kept in this constant spin of negativity and drama. That's where the human brain has been programmed to just move toward that. But if we could get away from that and start realizing that, man, there's a God who has information for me, and it's free. I get to just be and listen, and I get to be me, because
Mm.
right now the programming makes us condemn other people, compare with
Yes.
other people, judge other people, and we're all doing that because, again, we're programmed to think that everything's got to be this way. And if it doesn't look this way, then it's wrong. And it's like, well, who said? You know?
Mhm.
And this is a really, really challenging one, but it's like morality. Oh,
Oh yeah.
who set those rules? Who's now a lot of people are going to go straight to the Bible, but
Mhm.
I for me anymore, when I look at the Bible, I can see signs of, God, downloading things to people, but the people that wrote it, they're still people.
Mhm.
They may have got this revelation, which was, fantastic. But then when they wrote it out, they're writing it in their cultural understanding. They're writing it in with their own filters. All of them did that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, anything I read, whether it's the Bible or any other book, if I read, because I don't read that much, I just don't anymore. um, I'm looking at it, and I'm the guy that throws a monkey wrench in everything everybody does or says, because I just people are so eager to believe anything and everything,
Mhm.
especially when it comes
Mhm.
off of YouTube or Google or something. I'm
Yes.
like,
Yes.
people, stop.
Mhm.
It's just the programming, and actually question it. And my big thing, for everybody and anybody is question everything, especially those thoughts that come in your head and say you're not worthy, you're not good enough. Stop, just
Yes.
stop for a second. Look at those and questions like, whoa, where'd that come from? Oh, yeah, my mom used to say that all the time. And isn't it crazy that, from these young years, I mean, well, just 1 to 7 years old, you are such an open vessel to receive programming. And if unfortunately your parents weren't healthy, and or people around you weren't healthy, didn't have a good understanding of love, that they're just throwing crap and garbage at you, and you're receiving it because you don't know any better at that
Mhm.
age.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's it's really sad. But those are things that, you know, when those thoughts come, just questions like, oh, my mom said that all the time. Oh, but she was a hurting person too. You know what? That probably wasn't even true. You know what? It wasn't true.
Yes.
And just
Yes.
and let it go. Let it go. And have mercy and grace for the person that gave it to you, because they probably didn't know any better. In fact, I would say they didn't know any better.
Right, right. And I can imagine some of my audience
You know?
listening and going, "Well, that's great, Gil. That's great for you that you know how to just let go and everything's just, fancy pantsy for you right now." But I have to imagine that it has been a process of letting go. I mean,
Mm,
there are people who are hurting. There are people who are in certain
hmm
places of suffering and pain and different things like that. So for them to sit still and to try to listen in when they've had all this crap that's gone on, how do they navigate that? What advice can you give people to navigate so that they can tap into their own heart space?
one of the first things I would say that a person really needs to do is to choose, to really, really choose to love themselves. And because that's
How do you
to me
do
where it
that? How
begins.
do you do that if you, and I'm just
Yeah.
asking
Yeah.
questions, okay? Like how do you do
Yeah.
that if there
So,
hasn't been any healing? You don't even know what love is, and
yeah.
love for you maybe has been so twisted.
Yeah. And so again, it is a choice, but even now, I mean, the last week, and I didn't do it this morning, but I know I did it yesterday morning, but just in my meditation time, I'm quietly in my meditation time and I'm honestly just repeating or just talking to myself. And it's like, Gil, I really love you.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
are awesome. And it
Hmm.
starts a reprogramming at that point. And but we have to choose to slow down long enough and to really contemplate the fact, number one, I'm living inside this body. This body is
Hmm.
not me. It really isn't. It really isn't. I'm living inside of this body and and I used to do this, for Christians, I would say, for a moment, just picture yourself stepping out and just sitting with Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in heaven. You're sitting there with them because it says you're seated with Christ in heavenly places. So just imagine that you're sitting next to Jesus. You got Father, Son, Holy Spirit. You're all sitting there in heaven and you're looking down and there you are. For me, I'll just say, oh, and there's Gil. He's sitting at a park bench right now talking to Ellen, who's on a phone, and she's actually, you know, isn't that cool? And we're all just sitting there,
Hmm.
just amazed at this ability that Gil has to sit and experience this realm and this world. This is actually stepping outside of yourself and being able to see yourself for who you are. And then for me, many times I've done that. It's like I don't know if you need to edit this out, but it's like, man, my life right now is shit, but I'm
Mm.
having a life. I'm having a
Mm.
life. I'm experiencing a life.
Yes,
That's
yes,
cool. That's
yes,
cool. It hurts right now. It sucks right now, but I'm having a life.
yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's being outside of myself and being able to look in and then still to be able to truly say, and man, I love me. I love that dude. He's
Mm.
cool. He's all
Mm.
right. You know,
Hmm.
a lot of people don't like him because of what he's saying, what he's doing, but I like him.
Hmm. It sounds like you
And,
practice a lot of observation. You're observing
mhm.
yourself in a different state, really. You're not attaching. That's what it
Yeah,
sounds like to me. It feels like you're not attaching to this insane conditioning that can happen.
right. And that's exactly it. And I do that very naturally anymore. Again, I'll be in a
Mm.
situation and someone will come up and say, did you hear about such and such? Well, okay, here's a real instance. We had a couple days, well, Sunday, yeah, we had some big storms going through. No, Saturday,
Yeah.
we had some really big storms going through and tornado sirens going off over and over and over. And the day before, everyone was talking about the storms that are coming and this fear that was rising up in anybody. I'm just like, what are you guys doing?
Hmm.
You can choose to ride that fear if you want to. So it's like, no, I'm looking, if it comes, great. I'm looking forward to experiencing the elements. And
Mm.
I did my little prayer. My little prayer went something like this. It's like, all right, supposedly you're coming, and if you come, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to being impressed. I want to be impressed with you, but if you wouldn't mind, don't destroy anything. You know, be kind, be nice, but come. And then it came, and when it was here, I went outside and sat on my back porch and just watched and listened, and like, man, you are impressive. That's cool. But
Mm.
why would I want to go into fear? For me, it's a choice. I've learned to just stop fear. perfect love casts out all fear. And I'm learning to love myself. I believe God loves me. And let me just back up a little bit. I didn't believe that for 50 years, or I'll say 40 years.
Wow.
For
Yeah.
40 years, I was in chronic depression, and I don't even want to go into all the crap. I did attempt suicide and all that. And I hated myself. I
Hmm.
hated myself.
Hmm.
But at the age of 50, something began to happen, and I began to kind of wake up. And I used what was called then the courts of heaven,
Oh,
just
yeah.
going into heaven and coming out of agreement with all the things that I had agreed with about myself. And I actually spent about a year and a half doing that. And sometimes it'd be 3, 4, or 5 times a day of just, as soon as I was triggered, once I was triggered with something, yeah, when I hate something for whatever, happened, and it's like, wait a minute, I don't want anything to have that kind of control over me. So I would analyze it. And once I began to understand, because I made this agreement and did things this way and so on and so forth. Um, but just choosing to come out of agreement with those things. And I had my little mantra that I would go through and all that. Uh, and it worked. It just worked. I kept moving toward loving myself more and more, and accepting myself, and accepting that I haven't arrived. This
Right.
this life,
Right.
this life to me is about learning to love. And again, just something I choose to believe. We cannot prove anything.
Hmm.
Literally
Hmm.
believe there's no way to prove anything, because whatever you think you've got as proof, somebody's always got a little bit of evidence to throw a little monkey wrench in there, even if it's bizarre
Hmm.
and crazy. So
Hmm.
we can't prove anything. We definitely have a whole crap load of evidence that would point one direction or another on a lot of things. But I choose to believe that we came here from another realm of light and love to learn to love at a deeper level. Because if in that realm of light and love, it is just that, it's light and love, it's like, well,
Hmm.
there is no darkness there, there's no challenges. But if you want to really learn to
Exactly.
love, go to that earth realm. You're probably going to hate it,
Yes.
but it will
Yes.
teach you to love like no other way. You'll never learn a better way to love when you have challenges every day. And so I accept the challenges now as opportunities to learn to love. But I have not arrived. I
Hmm. Hmm.
definitely have not arrived.
No,
I
I don't
I
think any of us have. None of us have. I mean, it doesn't matter which way we look at
no,
it.
no.
But we definitely need the contrast. We have to have contrast. I remember when I was
Yeah,
wrangling with
I
a lot
believe
of the
that.
stuff
Mhm.
that happened in my life, and I was like, why did all this shit happen? Like what was going on here? And regardless of how people see it, I now think that we make contracts when we come here, and there's, different things that I just believe
Yeah,
that's there. And the way
yeah,
I wanted to live my life when I was a Christian was I want to be one of the most compassionate people ever. Well, how do you learn compassion if you're constantly surrounded by compassion and love? Like it just wasn't going to happen. And so I've had my
yeah,
share of
yeah,
challenges, but each time it's been a growth point. Those contrasts have been a growth point to that goal of compassion, of love, and not only loving myself, but loving someone else, learning to love them in their difference.
yeah. Yeah, and that's where I'm at right now, because I'm building
Mm,
an online community as well as a
yep.
physical community, where the idea is that we love without condition. And in other words, it doesn't matter what you believe or don't believe. I won't allow harmful stuff into my community, and even that is subjective.
Yes.
Because I will be the one that makes that final choice, because it is. But I'm pretty lenient. But I will also listen to the community as well. But for the most part, belief systems, you can believe whatever you want to believe.
Hmm.
And my thing is, can I teach a group of people how to love without condition, to where it doesn't matter what you believe, doesn't matter what you think, we're going to love one another anyway. Atheist, Buddhist, Hindu, it doesn't matter, as long as it's something that, as long as it's not harming one another, in a way that's physical. Because it's hard for a belief system to really harm somebody if If, for instance, now if I want to impose my belief system on you and it requires you to hate yourself, then I'm probably gonna, probably not gonna allow that. And
Mm-hmm.
besides, the other thing that I ask everybody is don't proselytize. Share if someone's interested, go ahead and share what you believe, but don't try to make someone and mold someone into you. Let them be them. And I want to hear. I personally want to hear what other people believe. I want to
Yeah.
hear how they think. I'm excited to hear how they think. It doesn't mean I'm going to agree with it. I just want to
Mm-hmm.
learn. I want to understand. But
Mm.
when they start trying to impose it on me and tell me that my belief system is wrong and that theirs is right, yeah, then we're going to have a little bit of an impasse probably. Um, but if you want to share, then I get to choose. Because if you're just sharing with me what you believe and think, and as you're sharing with me, I'm like, oh, that's so good. I
Mm.
like that. I'm going to work on adapting that into my life now because that, just sharing it, you weren't trying to impose it on me.
Yes,
Unfortunately, that's what a
yes.
lot of religions want to do. They want to impose and tell you that this is the truth and that everything else is a lie. And to me, that's just a very low vibration.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just,
And I mean, when you think of the universe,
yeah.
even, it's so huge and big. How in the world can we know everything? I mean, the universe is every day expanding. If we look at just from science, a scientific perspective, the universe is expanding every day. Stars are exploding
Yeah.
and recreating. Things are happening every day. So there is no possible way
Mm-hmm.
for us to know it all at all. And I
And
love what
yet,
you're saying. Go ahead. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, I saying that I've said for a long time. It's like everything God is, I am, because He lives in me, right? And I'm in Him. So everything He is, I am. But I also come to this. I end it with this: everything He is, I am, but I'm not Him. So He is the vastness and the full knowledge of the universe. But because He's in me and I'm in Him, and again, that's just energy. We're all in the same ocean of energy, right? But because of that, it's like I have access to that when I'm ready for it. But I
Mm,
believe that's where God steps in and says, well, I'm going to give you this for right now because you can handle this. But the vastness of the universe is there, but I think it would blow our little minds. But
sure.
yeah, so there's no way I can know everything, but that knowledge is within me. It's kind of, for me anyway, that's what I believe. I just find it fascinating and it's exciting. It's like, wow, it's all there. And if I need it, God can pull up that card and say, here's what you need right now. But if I don't need it, it's like, yeah, I don't need to know how, God started it all or,
Mm,
how it
mm,
started. I don't
mm.
need to know that. But
But
yeah, I don't believe.
what you're speaking from is a position of being. See, being isn't striving, trying to get, to grasp, to have, to
Yeah,
attach.
it's good.
You're living from a place of
Hmm.
being. And so being is just what you're doing. I'm just
I like
being.
that. I like that. I like that. And it's fascinating when you learn to be too, because when we do meditations and we get to that place
Mm,
where we're kind of experiencing the idea of just being,
mm,
I'll ask people, and unfortunately, I need to do more. I don't know. I don't want to say prompting, but it's like when you're actually there in that place of being, you're actually there. And if you're honest, and I say, well, just describe it. Well, for me, the answer is it's indescribable.
yeah.
There's no way to define it. That's
Yeah.
how I know I'm in that space of being. So it's just like it's kind of nothing. It's kind of void. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of all things, all at the same time.
Mm,
It's just
mm,
being. It's like I don't have to do anything. It's
mhm.
just it's incredible, powerful position of freedom. Just I am.
Yes, yes. So I know that we're going to be closing here soon, but I just want to ask you just something else. There's a belief that's running around, and the belief is that out of your own eyes, you perceive what is in front of you, but nobody else can perceive what is coming out of your own eyes. And so the belief that seems to be going around right now is that everybody's living in their own universes. So I see a tree behind you because there's a tree behind you, but it's because I see that tree behind you. Now, do you believe, or can you give any ideas on this whole idea of having us all in separate universes living?
That to me is an idea. It is
I
a
love you.
possibility. You know, there again, we can't prove anything. It's like, are we in a game where we're just characters in a video game that some cosmic creature is playing, and we're just part of that? Again, when we look at the fact that we are programs, and
Mm.
if it is true that we can rise above all that programming, which it seems some people have and are able to do it on occasion, I've not met anybody who can do it consistently all the time. But it seems like, the miracles are opportunities where we've seen things happen that defy, all the laws that we understand. And so if what I'm seeing, and this is funny because I was actually contemplating this morning, like
Oh no.
probably 20 minutes before you called me. I was contemplating this, and I'm just sitting there thinking, it's like, all right, I see these green trees, and you say, yes, I see those green trees,
Mm.
but is my green the same as your green?
Oh, I love
Or
it.
when you see green, do you see yellow? But you've been
Oh
told and
God.
taught and programmed that that color is green, so you call it green, but you really see yellow. I mean, there's that, and then there's
Mhm.
just, again, back to what I said earlier. If you take away all your senses, well, hmm, how am I perceiving the universe now?
Is there
And
even a tree?
is there even a tree? It's that old question. It's like, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, does it really make a noise?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many things that we just don't know. And there's so many things at the quantum level. I mean, my
Oh
simple
gosh.
explanation of the quantum level is, quantum level, everything's happening all the time. That's it. If you, and that's, and I, in meditation, again, I don't know how or what's really happening, but I take people into what I call the quantum field, the
Mhm.
creative center of God, the heart of creation. I take them in there to where I don't, there's a big kick on co-creating. I'm co-creating with God, and I'm like, yeah, I don't do that anymore. I believe everything's already created, and that what I'm doing is I'm stepping into alignment with who I am. And when I step into alignment with who I am, the universe brings to me all the things that were already created for me to accomplish and to do when I'm aligned. I can fight that alignment. I can be constantly trying to be somebody else, comparing myself to everybody else. Do I look as good as they do? Do I do things the way they do? Who the heck? Who cares? Do things the way you do them. Look the way you
Yes.
look. Stop
Yes.
trying to compare and look like somebody else, because all the time that you're doing that, you're not being you. And the universe is missing out on you.
Hmm. Hmm. It's an
It's not
awareness,
missing
isn't
out.
it? It's an
Yeah.
awareness. I remember, I don't remember exactly where I was. I don't know if I was in a church or where it was, but I remember when the walls just disappeared. I mean, they literally like disappeared, and my eyes were open. I was looking at the back. Yeah, it was the church, the back end of the church. I was playing the piano, and the walls. I mean, it was like the walls just disappeared, and I was able to see out and through. And I thought
Mm.
to myself, okay, what's going on? But they kept disappearing. Like the parking lot kept things kept disappearing and disappearing and disappearing. And obviously the pastor interrupted, and then there was a lot of other stuff that happened. So I never got to see where I was headed.
Yeah.
But that experience always comes to my mind when I'm thinking of things like, yes, Jesus was, and then all of a sudden there he is. How did that happen? What happened? Did he
Yeah.
travel? Did he whatever? Or did they just become aware? They just became aware of the quantum field. Because if everything is the quantum
Mm-hmm.
field, if everything is on this field that's going like this, then it seems to me anyway, all we have to do is tap into that field, have our
Mm-hmm.
eyes opened, and then everything, it's just like this moving screen. It's just
Yeah.
happening
And what you're
all the
talking about
time.
now is so there is one book that I've been listening to for a long time. It's like a 24-hour book if you listen to it on audio. There is one book. I said I don't listen to a lot of stuff. This one book, I just I just plug it in every once in a while, listen to a piece of it. I haven't even got through it yet. I got 17 hours to go yet, but it's called transurfing. And
Oh,
what you're talking about there
yes.
is, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
can't remember the author, but I love it. It's just like, yeah, I don't, I don't believe it all. That doesn't matter. It
Hmm.
could all be true. But
Hmm.
but but it's just this beautiful thing of realizing that again we are energy and there are energy
Hmm.
fields that are flowing. That's why I continue. My mantra is let go and flow. That's my main mantra. Let go and flow. Let go of what you think and expect and want and your preferences and all that. Let that go and flow with what the universe is already doing in you and through you. We're constantly fighting the flow, and hence our out of balance, out of alignment, out of whatever. you know I would rather live a life of peace, peace that passes all understanding, that I just rest and I flow with what God's doing. And I believe I'll accomplish 1,000 times more than I could in my best day striving. And I
But see,
love it.
that's not
So,
co-creating. So what you're doing there is you're just saying that's not co-creating. Because the minute you think of co-creation, it's like I'm
mhm.
doing something. But we
Right,
are
right.
creators. We are creating all the time. We've been created from creator, creating, who is creating. No, so that's in
Mhm.
us. But when
Yeah.
you say what you said, let go and flow, what basically is happening is you're almost kind of caught at the picture that came to me was I'm just caught on this wave, this river, and I'm in it, and I'm just going, woo, here I am, and I'm just going down the river. That's it. I'm letting it guide and letting it, but I in that am not striving to create within that. I'm just in it, of it, part of it. It is me, and I'm
Uh-huh.
going with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's often an analogy that I'll give is just like if you could be in this river and you are just flowing in it, you're not panicked trying to grab onto the sides. That's the fear and control. You fear something, then you want to control it. So in that river analogy, you're fearing that you don't have control where you're going, so you're trying to grab onto the side, the banks, whatever you can get a hold of, and you're just creating ripples that don't need to be made when you can
Mm-hmm.
just flow with it. And the thing is, I believe sincerely that when we flow with it, we are being we are being us, you are being you, and when I
Yes,
am
yes, yes,
being
yes.
me in that river flow, I am accomplishing things in the universe that I am meant to accomplish, and I accomplish them from a place of rest. Doesn't mean there's no challenges, no, but it just means I get to even face those challenges from a place of rest and just know that everything's going to work out. It
Mm-hmm.
may not work out
Mm-hmm.
exactly the way I want it to, and it may even be painful at times, but everything's going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's going to work out
Mm-hmm.
for my good, and it will all be okay. Any challenge that I face that's painful, I believe it's for my good, and I will learn something from it. Even
Yeah.
if it came out of a mistake that I made, I was like,
Yes.
God knew it. God wasn't surprised.
Yes.
So I want to go back real quickly to the idea of taking that. I don't know if you take it to this level, but again, back in my retreat just a weekend ago, we were having this talk around a campfire, and we're just sitting there talking. I'm like, yeah, you know, we could go along with the belief too, if you want to. You can go along with the belief that hey, this whole universe, everything I'm doing, talking to you, the people around me, these are all figments of my imagination,
Oh
my
yeah.
universe I'm creating, and you're just a piece of that, and everybody listening
Oh
is just a
God.
piece of that. And that's a thought as
Hmm.
well, but
Yep.
I'm not. You know, that's one that I don't carry too far into. But I do believe that, we with our energy, we do have some control. I just want to be very careful how I use that to make sure that I'm not, fighting against what the flow of God is actually doing. Because we can
Yes.
and we do. We do fight against it often. And I think
Hmm.
that's what we see is a lot of the chaos. But in another way, it's like everybody's playing their part. Would I, if everybody were loving and kind and precious and all that, would I really get the challenges that I need in order to love? It's like we could go around and around with crazy questions, or we can just say, it is what it is, and I'm here to learn, and I'm
Yeah.
here to experience.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Gil, I feel like I could talk to you for ages. I feel like I
I'd the
just
same
could.
here.
I love just chatting with you, and I'm looking forward to when I come home in the States. I arrive on May 2nd, and I look forward to not being far from you. So it might be a
Yeah.
bus ride I might take from Florida to you or something, or to come to your little
Well,
retreat center.
we definitely will talk about it because I've wanted to go down to Gainesville and see Michael Singer and his
Yeah, yeah.
Temple of the Universe.
Uh-huh.
And so I haven't done that yet. So maybe we can work something out and I go down and visit there and pick you up and bring you up, and then you don't have to do a bus ride.
You will have a place to stay too. I want you to know that because I've already talked it over with one of my friends. I said, if this, because you had mentioned this before, you wanted to come to Gainesville. I'm only 45 minutes from Gainesville. So
Oh,
he's talked
really?
about that. Yeah, oh
Sweet.
yeah. I'm in St. Augustine, so I'm a shot straight across to Gainesville.
Oh, uh,
I
yeah,
know how to
yeah, I
get
remember that now. And
there. I
yes,
know where the temple is. I know where I'm going. So yeah, yeah,
seriously.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So like,
All right. We got to
so
talk
we'll
more.
plan this. We'll definitely plan it. You will have a place to stay because if we're going to go together, then you would just come and we'll just put you up on the couch maybe, and then we'll ride out the next morning or something. But let's talk it through. But
Love that.
this has just been an incredible joy to talk with you and just to hear your journey.
Same
I
here.
love that we got into all of it like we did. I'm glad we got into some of the nuts and the bolts of the shifting of your belief, and you talked about that and you were practical with that. And that's just going to help a whole lot of people. So, is there any last remaining things you'd like to say, or you can tell people where they can find you before we close out?
Well, best probably the best place to find me is on Facebook. Just Gil Hodges and
Okay.
Gil Hodges podcast. Those are both out there. Um, One of the websites, probably the best one, would be choicecommunity.org.
Okay.
All about understanding our power of choice. And those probably be the best ones. And I'd love to hear from people. I love to, and there are some courses on that website, but I'd love to hear from people. And I probably in the next few months will be starting some personal mentoring, group mentoring on this. I've already got some other groups that I'm running that way, but I'll probably be opening up a new one here soon. So we're coming
Okay.
to the end of one of them, and we'll open it up for new people. So
That's
it's
fantastic.
it's a blast. I love seeing people set free. I love seeing people set
Yes.
free. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And
Yeah.
I could learn a lot from you as well. I can feel that too. So, Gil, just thank you so much for being on here. Thank you for
Yeah.
just allowing yourself to be
Thank you.
present. And I love that you're in nature. That just totally, the backdrop was fantastic. Sometimes I get people in the weirdest backdrops, and yours, I was just like, oh, look at that tree. So
And I
all
don't
right.
know, can you see the lake back there? Are you
I
able to
can
see the
see
lake?
that, yeah, a little bit, a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a little bright. It's washed out, but yeah, it's a beautiful place. I come here to run. All right, this is what
Perfect.
love to run and contemplate God while I'm running. I do a lot of that.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Gil, for being here.
Thank
And I'm
you.
gonna sign off now, but you're amazing. And we will definitely connect when I hit Florida and probably before then, and all of that. So
All right, sounds good. Love you. Take care.
thank you.
Blessings. Bye bye.